Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep. Welcome to another episode of International Relations this week. Under this series, every Wednesday at 8 p.m., we have been covering important geopolitical developments that have a bearing on India's national interests. These discussions are strictly from the perspective of UPSC Civil Services examination. As I mentioned last week, starting from this month, we have changed the discussion structure under IR this week. Along with discussing three major developments in complete detail, we shall also take up one international organization or a treaty or a convention which is in news, specifically to help you for your prelims preparation. And also to help improve your map reading skills, we shall take up important places that are in news and ensure that you are familiar with all the important locations. This has been designed to help you prepare for the upcoming prelims. Because if you've seen the recent papers of prelims, you will notice that a lot of questions from international relations have been appearing. Along with questions on India's bilateral relations, there are questions related to international organizations, treaties, conventions. There are questions related to places in news as well. So the whole purpose of this initiative is to help you comprehensively prepare for the upcoming prelims. So if you found this initiative to be helpful, do support us by liking the video, share your comments, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. So let's start with today's discussion and cover these topics one by one. First, we shall start with India-US space cooperation. Space cooperation in the civilian domain has been a very important aspect of the India-US relations. This topic has been in news because recently the Joint Working Group on Civil Space Cooperation between India and US has met, and the two sides have agreed to take forward their outer space cooperation in several domains. This is a part of the ICET platform that they have created, the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies. This is something we have discussed in previous sessions as well. So India-US have established an initiative on critical and emerging technologies, which will focus on artificial intelligence, robotics, etc. And it also provides a lot of focus on space cooperation. Since many decades, India-US have been collaborating with each other in the space domain, and now they have decided to take this further by collaborating in the field of human space exploration as well. Both India-US are actively looking to work in the domain of human space flight. They're also looking to collaborate in other areas of commercial space exploration. This includes cooperation in the field of navigation systems, space flight safety, and space situational awareness. Space flight safety is again critical for any manned mission, for any human space flight program. India is planning the Gaganyaan mission, which would be our first human space flight program. And India is collaborating with various countries, including Russia, France, and we are looking to collaborate with US as well on this ambitious program. To make India's space flight, manned space flight successful, India is taking the assistance of Russia, France, and now the United States. Then with regard to space situational awareness, mainly to deal with any space-based threats, both natural and man-made, India-US have set up a collaboration to track any objects in space that could threaten our space assets or which could pose a threat to Earth itself. So these are some important areas that the two countries have identified where they will collaborate in the coming days. Also, the NISAR satellite was in news. Recently, the US has dispatched the NISAR payload to India. It's a joint satellite project, a very ambitious project, and it will be launched by early 2024. So because of these two developments, India-US space cooperation was in news. So let's use this opportunity and thoroughly understand the space cooperation between the two countries. Because this topic, this discussion, will not only help you cover a number of prelims topics, but you can even expect a mains question on this. Just a question on India-US space cooperation. So let's begin by talking about the entire history of space ties between India and US. See, India has been collaborating with US from the 1960s in the space domain. Right when US started its full-fledged space program in the 1950s, during the heights of the Cold War. Parallelly, India was also taking initial baby steps in the space domain with ISRO. In the initial years itself, by 1962, India became one of the partners with NASA to take forward India's space program, the civilian space program. Parallelly, we did have tensions between India and US in the 1970s, 1980s, as India and US were on the opposite sides of the Cold War. But despite these tensions, these geopolitical tensions, despite US trying to cripple India's nuclear and space program, parallelly, there was some collaboration taking place in the civilian space domain. And this is a very interesting aspect of India-US relations. When India launched its first sounding rocket from Tumba, which is in coastal Kerala, and when India established the Equatorial Rocket Launching Station at Tumba, NASA played an important role in helping India. NASA helped in establishing the first spaceport of India at Tumba in Kerala, and it also supplied the Nike Apache rocket system, which India used for its sounding rocket launches from Tumba. Following this, NASA and ISRO collaborated in the SITE project, or the Satellite Instructional Television Experiment, in which NASA launched a broadcasting satellite to broadcast educational programs via television sets. Under this program, TV sets were supplied to several villages in India. Around 2,000 remote villages were covered, through which educational programs were broadcasted. This became a very popular initiative and it gained a lot of acceptance in India as well. So this was another element of cooperation between India and the US. So since then, India has been a major trading partner of the US in the space domain. We have procured a lot of space-related technologies, including satellite design and construction technologies, rocket and launch vehicle technologies, creation of spaceport facilities, etc. But this was not always a smooth relationship. As I told you, this period from 1970s to almost early 2000, this whole period was a difficult period for India-US relations. As both sides were on the opposite sides of the Cold War, it led to tensions in the bilateral relationship, and the US kept making attempts to disrupt our nuclear and space program. Since the nuclear program and the ballistic missile programs are very closely linked with the civilian space program, the US kept putting pressure on India. The US had a problem that India did not sign the Non-Proliferation Treaty. As India quit the Non-Proliferation Treaty and India rejected signing this because it was a discriminatory treaty, the US started exerting pressure on India in order to disrupt the nuclear and space program of India. So, on one hand, we saw the emergence of these tensions in the relationship, which was affecting space cooperation as well. But parallelly, there were some areas where the two sides were still collaborating. For example, in 1980s, the US provided the telecommunication satellite system, which led to the INSAT series of satellites by ISRO. The INSAT series of satellites have played a critical role in our telecommunication sector. It was a flagship satellite series of the ISRO, which India had procured from Ford Aerospace. Later, through 1980s, 1990s, the US even launched few Indian satellites on top of American launch vehicles, and the US space shuttle also deployed an Indian satellite into low Earth orbit. So there were areas where we were still working together, but especially in 1990s, particularly after the Pokhran nuclear test of 1998, the tensions increased between the two countries as US targeted India with economic, technological, and military sanctions. The tensions, which were boiling since the Cold War days, reached its peak after India tested its nuclear weapons, and the US was targeting India again as India had carried out these tests outside of the Non-Proliferation Treaty. The US was constrained from supplying any advanced rocket technology as well because India was not part of MTCR, the Missile Technology Control Regime. So essentially, India was isolated with regard to critical technologies and systems in the space domain because of our nuclear weapons program. The US would step up its targeting of India after the Pokhran tests, and these sanctions did have an impact on India's defense and space program. So essentially, this was the low point of India-US space relations. 1980s to 1990s saw these tensions emerge, and it was completely disrupted after the Pokhran tests. So during this tough period, India went ahead on its own. It managed to promote indigenous research and development and indigenous development of critical technologies in the space domain. But after the 9/11 attacks in 2001, we saw a major shift in global geopolitics. India-US started getting closer in the strategic domain, especially in the field of defense, counterterrorism, intelligence sharing, etc. This translated to a strategic partnership, and the two countries established the next steps in strategic partnership in 2004 between the then Vajpayee government and the George Bush administration. This was taken forward by the Manmohan Singh government, and from here onwards, India-US became close strategic partners. We started collaborating in almost every domain, including education, healthcare, climate change, and the central pillar of this relationship was defense and critical technologies. So space cooperation became a focus post 2004, and ISRO and NASA continued collaborating in key projects, including the Chandrayaan-1 mission. So when ISRO reached the moon through Chandrayaan-1 mission, couple of payloads which were on board Chandrayaan-1 were designed by NASA. For example, the Moon Mineral Mapper, which helped in mapping out the mineralogy of the lunar surface, was designed and developed by NASA. In the Gagan system as well, the GPS-aided navigation system, primarily for aircrafts. In this as well, the US helped India. NASA provided navigation technology to ISRO. India also started helping US, especially American universities, American companies who were looking to launch smaller satellites, microsatellites, nanosatellites. For them, ISRO became a reliable partner. As PSLV, the primary workhorse of ISRO, offered a cheap and reliable option to launch these small satellites into low Earth orbit. So extensive collaboration developed after 2004, where US was also sharing important technology with India, and India was also assisting the US in its space program. So joint collaboration began, and recently during the 2+2 dialogue held in 2020, which was the third 2+2 dialogue, both the countries have agreed to cooperate with regard to space situational awareness as well. See, NASA already had a program since many decades to track any threats in outer space. It could be natural threats or man-made threats, which could threaten space assets or which could pose a threat to Earth itself. This includes near-Earth objects, including potential asteroids which can strike the Earth, or any other extraterrestrial threat. So NASA already had an active program to develop space situational awareness, to track any objects in outer space. Parallelly, ISRO also developed its own tracking network, which is called Netra. It's headquartered in Bengaluru. It's a network for tracking and analyzing space objects which pose a threat. So India-US agreed to collaborate in this domain, and NASA and ISRO have established a framework agreement to work together in the field of space situational awareness. So this again shows the improvement in the strategic relations and how outer space is a key area of focus for both the countries. Because the 2+2 dialogue, which involves the Foreign Minister and Defense Minister of India and their American counterparts, the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense, is primarily focused on defense and foreign policy collaboration. So the 2+2 dialogue focuses on many strategic areas, and outer space cooperation is one of the most important areas as far as India-US are concerned. Recently, both the countries had agreed to develop the NISAR satellite, which carries a synthetic aperture radar for high-resolution Earth observation. This agreement was signed in 2015, and now both the sides have reached an advanced stage in developing and building this satellite, And recently, just few days back, NASA has transferred the key payloads of NISAR satellite to India. So ISRO will further assemble this satellite. ISRO will also launch the NISAR satellite by early 2024. This is a very important project because synthetic aperture radars, they represent a crucial technology as far as space development and space exploration is concerned. Synthetic aperture radars, they have the advantage of capturing very high resolution pictures of the Earth, even by penetrating cloud cover, and they can even take very high resolution images during the night. This is the advantage of synthetic aperture radars. They are often employed in military spy satellites for reconnaissance and for intelligence gathering. But NISAR is a civilian satellite. It is meant to focus on disaster management, to study the melting of glaciers as a result of climate change, to understand land subsidence, landslides in the Himalayan belt. So this is a very, very important collaboration between ISRO and NASA, and this satellite is expected to be launched early next year. So as you can see, both the countries have really stepped up their collaboration in the space domain. Despite the low point, which was seen in 1980s, 1990s, both have revived their cooperation in the space domain, and today both countries have become very close partners for each other. So there are many opportunities that are present here for both India and US. It will be a mutually beneficial arrangement. It's not like before where India was simply taking the assistance of the US. Today India is in a position where we can help out the United States as well. Especially if you look at the human space flight program, which India is prioritizing, the Gaganyaan mission. This could synchronize with the Artemis program, which the US has recently launched, as the US wants to head back towards the moon. After the lunar missions of 1960s, 1970s, US had suspended further lunar missions. But recently it has reactivated the Artemis program. It has even launched the Orion spacecraft to test the initial technologies needed for a new lunar mission. Right? This would be a manned space flight from NASA. So this is where our priorities align together. US could help India with the human space flight program. It could help us in critical technologies. Russia and France are already doing that. Russia, for example, is already training Indian astronauts, the first batch of Indian astronauts. France is helping India in the field of space medicine, which is again crucial for manned space flight. So NASA can also pitch in with regard to space flight safety to ensure the safety of a manned mission. And this has become the priority of India-US collaboration. Along with this, both countries have a robust private space industry today. Especially in the US, the space domain has been opened up for private players since many years, and many major players have emerged in the private domain. I'm sure many of you would have heard about SpaceX of Elon Musk, then Jeff Bezos of Amazon also has his own space venture, Blue Origin, right? So like this, there are many other startups as well in the American ecosystem which specialize in space technologies. India also has opened up the space domain, which until recently was reserved exclusively for the public sector. Until recently, ISRO was the primary player in the space domain. Since it's a strategic domain, it was kept reserved only for public entities. But in the last few years, India has introduced major reforms. We have opened up the space sector for private participation. And today, there are a number of private players working closely with ISRO. India has even set up institutions like New Space India Limited and InSpace to promote collaboration between ISRO and the private space industry. We have even developed the first private launch vehicle of India. Private satellites are being developed. The space components and all the other components needed for launch vehicles and satellites today are being produced by the private industry. A lot of space-based startups are coming up and the government is actively encouraging them. So ISRO's long-term ambition is to focus on research and development and on large missions, including outer space exploration. So it would look to outsource the other routine missions like launching satellites, building and assembling launch vehicles. These are technologies which ISRO has already perfected. So it would like to transfer the technology to the private industry, and the private industry could pitch in, which saves precious time and resources for ISRO so that it could focus on core research and development and focus on important large-scale missions. So this agenda of India-US aligns with each other. The opening of the private space industry creates many opportunities for the space companies to collaborate and work with each other and contribute to the efforts of both the countries. So that is why this topic is very, very important. But despite all these opportunities that exist, there is a concern that with regard to our priorities, there is some mismatch. If you look at the vision of India, the priorities of ISRO, and compare this with the priorities of US and NASA, there does exist a mismatch. This is something we have to keep in mind. The US of late is focused more on space exploratory missions, exploring the outer space, going back to moon through lunar missions, through manned lunar missions, and other space exploratory missions which are beyond the low Earth orbit. This is a top priority for US as of now, as it is increasingly competing with China. On the other hand, even though India also has a vision focused on outer space exploration, our priority is still on satellites, placing important satellites in Earth's orbit. Our capabilities are mainly focused on missions which are centered around the Earth's orbit, within the low Earth orbit or around it. Because our priority is still to ensure that space development brings about socio-economic development. ISRO has always ensured that its initiatives and all the missions serve a critical socio-economic purpose for the nation, to provide communication services, broadcasting services, to help in resource mapping, to help in disaster management, right? This has been the top priority of ISRO, whereas NASA has moved beyond this and it is looking at much larger, more expensive, more complex missions, looking into the outer space and beyond the low Earth orbit. So this mismatch in priority, along with the asymmetry in the capabilities of the two sides, could become a limiting factor in this collaboration. US and NASA are clearly miles ahead when it comes to their outer space capabilities. Even though India is a formidable space power, we are still many steps behind. And here India is also in competition with China when it comes to placing satellites in orbit, developing more military satellites, etc. So in terms of capabilities, in terms of long-term vision and priorities, there is a mismatch as well. So this could become an inhibiting factor for further collaboration. But otherwise, despite this small concern, there are plenty of opportunities for India and US to work together. So that is why this topic is so important, and we have chosen this to cover this topic in detail. So you'll be able to answer any prelims or even mains question based on this topic. Now let's move on to the second topic and focus on the Southeast Asia region. Related to Southeast Asia, there has been an important development this week. The third India-ASEAN Digital Ministers meeting has taken place. This was held last week. It brings together the digital ministers, the concerned ministries involved with ICT technologies, information and communication technologies. In the case of India, it would be the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. So under ASEAN, we have this important platform where the Southeast Asian countries work with their dialogue partners to promote collaboration in the field of digital technologies and ICT technologies. So India is an active participant in these meetings. And for the third meet, the theme was synergy towards a sustainable digital future. As the world is transitioning towards a digital economy, and as we are being driven by the fourth industrial revolution based on critical emerging technologies such as AI, robotics, machine learning, neural networks, Internet of Things, 5G networks, etc. There is a lot of interest amongst countries to work with each other and collaborate so they can build synergy towards leveraging the digital technologies for building a sustainable and equitable future. So this has remained a priority for India and ASEAN. As you know, India has a dedicated policy towards the Southeast Asia and East Asia region. It's called the Act East policy. Last year, that is 2022, marked the 30th anniversary of the launch of Look East policy of India. The Look East policy was launched back in 1992. And the prime objective of the Look East policy was to revitalize India's relations with Southeast Asia and East Asia. This was upgraded to Act East policy in 2014 by the Modi government to add further impetus to our approach towards Southeast Asia and East Asia, which is a critical part of the Indo-Pacific region. So under the Look East Act East policy, we have collaborated with the ASEAN group, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which represents the Southeast Asia region. It's a very important regional grouping of 10 Southeast Asian countries, which you can see in the map here. It includes Myanmar to Vietnam to Singapore to Indonesia to Philippines and the others. All these countries are very close partners for India, and under the Look East Act East policy, we have prioritized our ties in the field of economic relations, defense and maritime security, cultural relations. We are focusing on improving connectivity and trade. And one other important area of collaboration is digital technologies. So the ASEAN group, it holds a periodic meeting of digital ministers, essentially the telecom and IT ministers of the respective countries. And ASEAN invites its dialogue partners, which includes Australia, Canada, China, European Union, India, of course, Japan, South Korea, New Zealand, Russia, UK, and US. These are the important dialogue partners of ASEAN. So the digital ministers of these countries are also invited to take part in the digital ministers meeting, which is hosted by the ASEAN group of countries. So India has been an active participant in these meetings in the past 2 editions as well. We have taken forward digital collaboration and we have managed to achieve a lot of progress in this domain. So the third meeting which took place has allowed India to emphasize the reforms that we have carried out in the field of ICT technologies. During this meeting, India highlighted the progress that the country has achieved in adopting key digital technologies. India even pointed out the legal changes we have carried out to provide for fair competition, the competition laws which ensures fair competition and a level playing field for IT companies. India has spoken about its major achievement in the field of telecom and internet connectivity. Today we have managed to widen our coverage of telecom and internet networks. We have managed to reach out to the remotest corners of India, and it's today driving India's economic transformation as well. With regard to digital payments and digital economy, India has even emerged as a global leader, right? So India has stressed upon the progress the country has made, and we have highlighted the need for collaboration with ASEAN. We have called upon ASEAN to work with India in this digital transformation to ensure that these changes which are happening in the economy, right, where technology is being leveraged, to ensure that this transformation is equitable and sustainable, to ensure that the divides in the society can be plugged by leveraging technology, because technology is a leveler. It can create a level playing field by wiping out the various divides, especially the income divide. So India, ASEAN both have agreed to focus on such technologies which will help transform their economies and provide for equitable, sustainable growth. They have even approved a digital work plan for 2023. Under this digital work plan, both sides will collaborate in the fields of emerging critical technologies such as AI, cybersecurity, IoT, and other next generation technologies. They are looking to employ these advanced technologies in the fields of security, healthcare, education, cybersecurity, etc. So this collaboration would be vital for India's Act East policy, and it would help both the sides leverage the advantages they bring into this relationship. Both sides have their own strength. There are many important countries in the ASEAN group which hold a dominant position in the world of electronics and IT. India also is a leader in the domain of IT and digital technologies. So this is a common objective of both the sides, where they are looking to leverage the potential of both the sides to transform their economies and thus provide for equitable growth and sustainable development. So in that regard, this development becomes very important. Now, moving on to the third topic, I would like to take up a very interesting development. We are going to discuss India's Buddhist diplomacy. It's a part of our soft power diplomacy. India has always prioritized the promotion of soft power relations along with leveraging its hard power. So wherever necessary, we do leverage our hard power, which is our military strength and economic strength, for coercive policies against hostile countries. But with friendly nations, we mainly pursue a soft power based relationship where we focus on building friendly ties, cultural exchanges, and sharing the best practices with each other in various domains. So when it comes to soft power diplomacy, India's focus is on building cultural relations. Our focus is on leveraging the civilizational heritage of India, be it art, be it various forms of art and literature, music, right? Or be it yoga, or be it the religious cultural heritage that we bring to the table, right? India would like to leverage all of this as part of its soft power diplomacy. We have ancient linkages with various societies offered through Hinduism, Islam, then Christianity, and especially Buddhism. India is the birthplace of Buddhism. So we leverage Buddhism and our Buddhist heritage in our diplomacy, specifically towards Southeast Asian and East Asian countries where Buddhism is still very, very popular. So this is India's Buddhist diplomacy. There are several Asian countries where Buddhism is still a major religion. There are few South Asian countries as well, like Bhutan, then Sri Lanka, even Nepal, right? All these countries are known for their Buddhist heritage. If you look at Sri Lanka, it's a Buddhist majority nation. Bhutan as well. Then our neighbors like Myanmar is another Buddhist majority country. And across Southeast Asia and East Asia, stretching from Japan to South Korea, from China to Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, across these countries, you find that Buddhism is still very popular in these countries. So in our diplomacy, we have been leveraging our Buddhist civilizational heritage and we are promoting cultural ties in this domain. This is also an integral part of our Look East, Act East policy as well. So the Buddhist diplomacy of India is mainly focused on these South Asian countries and Southeast Asian and East Asian countries where Buddhism is still widely popular. Now this topic is in news because India and South Korea are marking the 50 years of their diplomatic relations by carrying out a Buddhist pilgrimage. A Dhamma Yatra has been organized by India and South Korea, and around 108 Buddhist pilgrims from South Korea are going to conduct a historic walk from Lumbini, the birthplace of Lord Gautam Buddha, which is in Nepal, covering all the key Buddhist sites in India. So this would be a 43-day journey, and the pilgrims will be covering more than 1,100 kilometers by walk. So this initiative highlights the relevance of Buddhist diplomacy. It highlights the advantages India has by leveraging its civilizational ties with these countries. Historically, if you look at the ancient times, since then, Buddhism has been a common connect between India and various Asian countries. As Buddhism traveled from India to various Asian countries, the relations have always flourished during the olden times as well. And in the modern relations, we are just trying to leverage this. If you look at various kingdoms and empires, even they were actively promoting Buddhism, right, which reached the faraway shores of Southeast Asia and East Asia as well. The Nalanda University is another classic example, one of the oldest universities in the world, which was a major center for Buddhist studies, which is in today's Bihar. So from all across Asia, students used to come to Nalanda centuries ago, thus forming a strong cultural bond between the Indian civilization and other Asian civilizations. So through our Buddhist diplomacy, we are simply trying to revive this relationship. And the government of India is organizing this historic walk of Buddhist pilgrims from South Korea in collaboration with the concerned states. We are working with Nepal as well with regard to this initiative, and the pilgrims will be visiting all the key Buddhist sites from Lumbini to Bodh Gaya. These sites basically cover the entire journey of Lord Buddha, Lord Gautam Buddha, the founder of Buddhism. This initiative is a part of our Buddhist Circuit initiative. The Buddhist Circuit initiative has been widely promoted by India since 2016, through which we are promoting tourists from these countries, from these Asian countries, to visit the Buddhist pilgrimage sites in India. Under the Buddhist Circuit initiative, we are improving the tourist infrastructure at all important Buddhist sites, be it at Bodh Gaya, Sarnath, at Kushinagar. All the required tourist infrastructure is being created. Better connectivity, better roads, new airports are being built, better hotels. So the whole tourist industry is being promoted and better tourist infrastructure is being created at the Buddhist pilgrimage sites. So we can attract tourists from these Asian countries, thus bringing revenue to India and also building strong cultural bonds with the people of all these countries. So this is a very ambitious soft power initiative of India as part of its Buddhist diplomacy. So under the Buddhist Circuit and in this pilgrimage, which has been planned with South Korean pilgrims, the pilgrims will be walking all the way from Lumbini, which you can see in this map here, the birthplace of Lord Buddha. They will cover all the other important Buddhist sites like Kapilavastu, which is also in Nepal, where it is believed that the bone fragments, the ash fragments of Lord Buddha are preserved. They are called the Kapilavastu relics. They will cover important sites in Uttar Pradesh, such as Shravasti, Kushinagar, and Sarnath. They'll also cover Vaishali, Rajgir, and Bodh Gaya, of course, which are in Bihar. These are the important Buddhist pilgrimage sites scattered across India and Nepal, which are directly linked with the life and teachings of Lord Buddha. Now, this is where I want you guys to take up a small exercise. Read about all these Buddhist pilgrimage sites which are mentioned in the map, from Lumbini to Bodh Gaya. Identify their importance with regard to Buddhism and the life of Lord Buddha, and post the link of each of these sites in the comment section below. Just point out, why is Lumbini important? Why is Bodh Gaya important? Why is Sarnath important? Right? So just read about it, take it as a small exercise and post this in the comments below. So the pilgrimage that India has planned with the state government of UP and Bihar and also with Nepal covers all these important sites. So this initiative is very much a part of our Buddhist Circuit initiative. So under this initiative, we are collaborating with Nepal, as Nepal also shares the Buddhist heritage of India. After all, Lord Buddha was born in Nepal, in today's Nepal, at Lumbini. There are many important sites in Nepal as well. So few years back, India wanted to develop the birthplace of Buddha, that is Lumbini. So since then, we have been interested in working with Nepal, and today we are taking forward this relationship. See here, India is not only leveraging the soft power that we have with all the Asian countries by promoting Buddhism and by promoting Buddhist pilgrimage. We are also trying to attract more tourists from these countries. But the irony is, even though India is the origin of Buddhism, the Buddhist pilgrimage to India is very, very minimal. According to statistics, we barely get 1% of the Buddhist pilgrims in the world. Whereas other countries, especially in Southeast Asia, like Thailand, Indonesia, and others, they have really tapped this market through better strategies. They attract majority of the Buddhist tourists from Japan, South Korea, China, and other countries. Whereas India, despite being the birthplace of Buddhism, despite having so many important historical sites, we are not able to attract Buddhist tourists from other countries. So that is the primary purpose of Buddhist Circuit initiative. To revive the tourist infrastructure here, attract tourists, which will not only boost our foreign exchange, but it will also boost our diplomacy. It will help us build close cultural bonds with the people of these countries where Buddhism is still popular and relevant. Now, this is where we face a competition with China. When India was looking to develop Lumbini in Nepal, China stepped in a few years back and it offered to invest $3 billion to build a cultural center at Lumbini to develop the site. And it also proposed a strategic railway line from Tibet to Lumbini. From Lhasa to Lumbini, it had proposed a railway line and a Buddhist cultural site at Lumbini. Now, this had taken India by shock and surprise, because this would not only enhance China's soft power influence in Nepal, but it would also serve a strategic purpose. In the name of a cultural project, China was looking to build a strategic railway line connecting Tibet with Lumbini. And don't forget, Lumbini is located right along India's borders, right next to UP Bihar. India's fears was these railway lines could serve a strategic purpose if required, which could allow China to mobilize troops very quickly towards the Indian border. So last year, India took a very big landmark step in this regard. We managed to outdo China. And last year, Prime Minister Modi, when he traveled to Nepal, he has laid the foundation stone for a Buddhist culture center at Lumbini. India has managed to grab this project as Nepal and China were not able to go ahead. And India is looking to invest a huge sum to develop the Buddhist heritage sites in Nepal, in collaboration with Nepal. So now India is going to build the Buddhist Cultural Center, the Peace Center at Lumbini, and this is also in line with our vision of Buddhist Circuit Initiative. So from Lumbini to Kushinagar, all across these sites, India will be developing the tourist infrastructure to promote our soft power influence. Recently, for example, we inaugurated an international airport at Kushinagar, and top Sri Lankan government officials were invited to take part in the inaugural ceremony. So that highlights the potential of Buddhist diplomacy of India. It could improve our relations with Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, all the Southeast Asian countries and East Asian countries. So that is why this topic is very, very important. Now, we come to the last two topics. We shall take a look at an international organization which was in news last week. We shall discuss about the Paris Club, primarily to help you for your prelims. The Paris Club was in news because the Paris Club of Crediting Nations, or Paris Club of Creditors, they met recently and they agreed to support Sri Lanka with regard to the bailout package it is receiving from the IMF. The Paris Club of Creditors, they agreed to provide financial assurances to the IMF, which is looking to extend emergency funding to Sri Lanka as it is going through a grave economic crisis. In this case, the creditors to Sri Lanka are none other than China, India, and Japan. These three countries have provided massive loans to Sri Lanka over the years, which has placed Sri Lanka under a debt burden. So to help Sri Lanka overcome the crisis and to restructure this debt, through the Paris Club of Creditors, the crediting nations have agreed to provide assurances to the IMF bailout package that Sri Lanka is receiving. It's in this context that Paris Club is in news. Last week, we spoke about the IMF because of the Sri Lankan crisis and the economic crisis in Pakistan. So based on this, let's talk about another important group called the Paris Club. The Paris Club traces its origin back to 1956. It's a group of creditor nations which basically provide large loans, and it is mainly comprised of Western creditor countries. It's mainly comprised of developed Western nations which provide large loans to the smaller and the poor countries. So back in 1950s, Argentina, which was a struggling economy back then, was facing a major crisis, and it had borrowed heavily from the Western countries. It was in a position where it couldn't repay the loans. So that is when all the creditor countries which had provided these large loans to Argentina, they met in Paris. That's why this group is called the Paris Club. Through this meet, the creditor nations agreed to support Argentina further by restructuring the loan, by reconstituting the loan and the repayment period so Argentina could get a breathing space. So since then, Paris Club has evolved into a major mechanism through which the creditor nations help the debtor nations. Essentially, the countries which provide these large loans, which mainly comprises of the developed Western countries, they help out the debtor countries which are taking the loans, which are falling under these economic troubles. So over the years, Paris Club has played a very important role in helping out many small countries which are unable to repay the bilateral loans that they have borrowed. According to the website of Paris Club, according to the official data provided by Paris Club, over the decades, around 478 agreements have been reached by the Paris Club of Creditors, and they have helped around 102 debtor countries. The total sum of this assistance through loans and loan extension and loan restructuring amounts to around $614 billion. They have helped several countries over the years to restructure the loans which the borrowing countries are not able to repay. So you should be familiar with the members of this group as well. The members include 22 countries which are part of OECD, the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. From Australia to Germany to South Korea to US, all these developed countries, Western countries essentially, are part of the Paris Club. They are the members. India holds an observer position at the Paris Club. India is an observer state. Even we provide loans to certain countries. In the context of Sri Lanka, for example, India is a creditor nation along with China and Japan. So since Sri Lanka is not able to repay the creditor nations, that includes India, China, Japan, through Paris Club, they have agreed to extend the term and provide Sri Lanka more support so that it can take the bailout package from IMF, get extended fund facility, and the loan has been restructured. So Sri Lanka gets a breathing space to repay these loans. So that is why the Paris Club is very, very important. Now coming to the last topic, let's look at Turkey and Syria as part of our discussion under places in news. Turkey and Syria have been in news for obvious reasons because of the devastating earthquake that hit the region where more than 35,000 people have been killed. This is one of the biggest disasters the region has seen. Right? The earthquake was centered around this belt, the Gaziantep Kahramanmaraş belt, stretching across Syria. There is a major fault line that lies over here where the Arabian plate and the African plate crashes into the Anatolian plate. So the rupture of the plate has generated a massive earthquake. Multiple earthquakes hit the region, causing massive devastation. And the worst part is that this is a region where Syrian refugees primarily had settled. Refugees from Syria had fled the conflict, the civil war in the neighboring country that you see here in the map, and they have again been hit by another disaster. Also, Turkey, Syria, both are frequently in news because of various conflicts that are going on in the region. So I would like to use this opportunity to show the map and help you identify some important locations in this region. See, Turkey is primarily located on the Anatolian Peninsula. This is the Anatolian Peninsula. This whole region that you are seeing here would be the Anatolian Peninsula. Part of it is also lying on the Balkan Peninsula here towards the Europe region. This is the Balkan Peninsula. As you know, Turkey is a country located both in Asia and Europe. It forms a link between Asia and Europe. So this country is surrounded by the Black Sea to the north, the strategic Black Sea, which is in news because of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This is the Crimean Peninsula, which you can see over here. You can get a small glimpse of Crimean Peninsula. Further north here, you have Ukraine. There are many important ports and naval bases of Ukraine and Russia towards this region of the Black Sea. Then Turkey is bound by Greece. There is Bulgaria over here in Eastern Europe, right? Then if you come towards the other side, towards the east, you have Georgia. There's Armenia here. It even shares a very small border with Azerbaijan. Just a 17-kilometer border, very short border here with Azerbaijan. It shares a border with Iran, then with Iraq and Syria. All right. To the south, you have the Mediterranean Sea over here. Then this is a part of Cyprus because Turkey has issues going on with Cyprus and also with Greece because Turkey has a lot of maritime resources in this exclusive economic zone of the Mediterranean and also the Aegean Sea here towards Europe. So with regard to the EEZ and the oil and other resources, Turkey, Greece and Turkey, Cyprus have a dispute and a conflict going on. So that's also a reason why you should be familiar with these locations. You see the Sea of Marmara here, very, very important water body because it forms the only connection between Black Sea and the Mediterranean. There are two important straits located over here, which are called the Turkish Straits, which have been frequently in news. The Turkish Straits include the Bosphorus Straits over here, closer to Istanbul, towards the northeast direction of Sea of Marmara. And towards the southwest over here, this small passage you see here, this is the Dardanelles Strait. These two straits together are called Turkish Straits. They are controlled by Turkey, and this is the only link between the Black Sea and the Aegean Sea, which further extends into the Mediterranean. Now, this is of great strategic importance, especially for Russia, because Russian Navy uses the Turkish Straits to pass through the region and enter the Mediterranean. So, to regulate the movement of ships through the Turkish Straits, there is a convention called the Montreux Convention. Through the Montreux Convention, Turkey has been given the rights to control the ship movement through the Turkish Straits, through Bosphorus and Dardanelles Straits. Civilian ships have freedom of navigation. They have complete freedom of navigation here. But military vessels can be restricted by Turkey. Military vessels have to take the permission of Turkey. And during times of war, Turkey gets more control over these straits. So because of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict, the passage of ships, especially Russian naval ships, through these straits was in news. And Turkey plays a critical role in controlling this important sea link and sea lane of communication. So that is something you should be familiar with. Then coming to Syria, it is surrounded by Turkey to the north here. This is Iraq. It shares a very big border with Iraq, a large boundary with Iraq. There is Jordan to the south, which you can't see in this map. There is Israel to the southwest and Lebanon over here. As you know, Syria and Israel have tensions between them. Israel has captured the Golan Heights near the Israel-Syria border, and towards the west it faces the Mediterranean Sea. So Russia has a major naval base over here in Syria facing the Mediterranean. Russia becomes a major player here. You can see important cities like Aleppo, which has been in news. Today this has become the last base for the Islamic State, for the ISIS. This is where ISIS took root in Iraq-Syria region. In 2014, ISIS captured large territories in Iraq and Syria and declared the Islamic Caliphate. But today, the Islamic Caliphate has been broken due to the assault carried out by Russia and US and the other countries. So today, ISIS has been cornered to this small region here around Aleppo, right? Then the region that you see here, at the junction of Turkey, Syria, Iran, Iraq, this whole belt is a Kurdish area. It's home of the Kurdish community, the Kurdish minorities who are fighting a war against Turkey. They are looking to liberate this region and form a separate country called Kurdistan. The Kurds have been frequently in news because of this conflict with Turkey. Also, the Kurds helped the US in their fight against Islamic State. The Kurd groups, the Kurd armed groups, they helped US to target and defeat Islamic State. So these Kurd outfits are in conflict with Turkey, and Turkey targets these Kurd outfits. So there are a lot of tensions in this belt where the earthquake has been reported. That is why I think all these locations are very, very important for the exam. Even for a general understanding, to better understand these developments, you need a very solid understanding of the geography of a place. Because geopolitics at the end of the day is all about geography of a place. Right? Physical geography and human geography of a place plays a very important role in defining the international relations of the region. So that is why I believe one should be very familiar with the maps of the region that we are discussing. So I hope this has helped in this regard. And if you found this initiative to be helpful, do support us by liking the video, share your comments, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. So that is it for today. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.